8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, and welcome to EN Publishing's monthly live stream. If you are used to these streams every month, you're used to seeing Jessica hosting this show. Unfortunately, Jessica is currently dying of the plague, so I have had to step in and take her place this month. I'm not a much better option because I spent the entire day sitting in a chair being tattooed for like 9 hours, that being the result. So I am completely exhausted. However, I will do my best. So I am Russ, aka Morrus, or Morrus, aka Russ. I run EN Publishing. And with me tonight is Paul Hughes, who is the author of this rather marvellous book, The Dungeon Delver's Guide. Hi Paul, how are you?
Hello, how are you doing? Good to see you, and good to see that book.
So this book is fantastic. So this proof copy, this is the only copy in the entire world, arrived, I think it was earlier this week, and I've been browsing through it all week, and it is absolutely gorgeous, and I can't wait, because we're going to talk all about this book. We're going to basically go through this book tonight, and tell everybody what's in it, because we've got the Kickstarter coming up at the end of the month, on the 30th of August, which is when you're going to be able to pick up this book, and if you're new to Level Up, a whole bunch of other Level Up books, cards, screens, and other paraphernalia. It's going to be awesome. But anyway, before we do that, Jessica has asked me to mention a few things. So I will do that, because occasionally I do what Jess asks me to do. Not often, but occasionally. So, she wanted me to talk about some of EN Live's stuff. So EN Live is what you're watching now. It's EN Publishing's live stream media audio twitchy thing. And we have various shows going on constantly throughout the month and every week. So I'm going to just quickly whip through them. So every Monday we have a live stream called Not D&D that is hosted by Jessica, and every Monday she invites on a guest, a designer of a tabletop RPG that is not D&D, and she talks to them for an hour all about that game. And she's had people from Dune, and she's had people from Evil Hat talking about Thirsty Sword Lesbians on. She's had loads and loads of really, really great guests, and that's every single Monday. You can watch that. All of these streams also you can catch up on YouTube, and you can catch up via podcasts as well. So if you haven't got time to tune in on a Monday night for an hour to watch Jessica talk to somebody, you can listen to it the next day or whatever. She wanted me also to mention Campaign Tuesday. At the moment we are running what is our official Level Up live stream campaign, which is called the Star Across the Seaway. Every Tuesday you can watch that, or again catch up via podcast. On the first Thursday of every month we have another live stream, which currently we're running through various Awfully Cheerful Engine adventures. So the last one was Strange Science. We did Bite Me, and various other ones. So the Awfully Cheerful Engine is a sort of one-shot, light-hearted, rules-light action comedy game, and each episode is something completely different. I'm out of breath now. I've still got to keep talking for another 55 minutes. I don't know if this is possible. Every Friday, of course, we have our flagship podcast, I guess, which is Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG talk. Well, we record it on Fridays. It goes out on Saturdays. We cover all of the week's RPG news, and we usually have a really, really incredibly funny sketch, which my co-hosts find highly entertaining every single week, because I write it and they love it. And we cover all the news, and we usually have a topic of the week which we dive into. This week, I would guess it's probably going to be the new D&D edition that was just announced. It's probably what we'll end up talking about, I expect. I don't know, maybe.
Seems like a good guess.
It's, we usually decide at the last minute after sitting there saying, what are we going to talk about now? I don't know. And then we just pick something at random. So yeah, so that's EN Live. All the different shows. I whipped through them as fast as I could. All the different shows that you can watch, listen to, catch up on, all covering a whole range of different things. But that is not really why we're here today. Why we're here today, and why Paul is here today, is to talk about this book. So this is The Dungeon Delver's Guide. Paul, why don't you tell me, as if I don't already know, what The Dungeon Delver's Guide is?
Well, it's two things, because the term dungeon delver sort of has two meanings in the book. One is for adventurers who are delving down into dungeons. It's a source book of new archetypes, new spells, backgrounds, treasure, stuff that players can use.
Yeah.
But also, as a narrator or a game master, it's a way that you can build dungeons for your players to explore. And if you take a look at this guy on the cover here, I'm not really sure which one he is. I have a feeling he's a game master, but
I guess so. I have had a lot of people ask me about those kobolds at the back. Are they stealing the door or are they mounting the door?
You know, it's funny that you should ask, because when I was doing the art order for this, I think I may have said to leave it unclear.
Right, okay.
I really wanted it to be, because the idea that the kobolds are trying to steal the door without this guy noticing is hilarious to me. But also they
Why
have
would you steal a door?
It's a wooden door. It's like...
Surely you'd steal what's behind the wooden door. You don't steal the door itself.
Maybe they have none in their lair, and this
I
is,
suppose.
You know, it's easier than making it yourself.
I guess.
I think most of us have had situations where players tried to steal something unexpected, often because you describe it offhand as made of silver or something like that, and then they're like, well, really?
I remember mentioning, I just threw in like a sort of like 40-foot adamantine door or something into some kind of game once, and somebody immediately calculated the value. And then just said, we really don't need to go on an adventure. We just take that door and go home. We're set for life.
The door.
Yeah.
That is one of the tough things about game mastering on the fly, is you put in something that's just meant to be awe-inspiring, and it immediately turns into money. Actually, before we really go onto the broad strokes here, one funny thing while we're on the subject, there is a page in this book that talks about the value of different stuff. If you have a door made of silver or gold, exactly how much is that going to be worth? How much is it going to weigh?
Because you just know that the players
because that's the
will
stuff
ask.
that comes up all the time, and this way you don't have to be surprised because someone in your party who's a smartass is goes and finds out exactly how much this door would weigh. You can know that before the adventure.
Paul, it's almost like you've played D&D before writing this book.
Once or twice. Yeah. Usually it's Go Fish, but we just started, role playing the other week.
So should we work our way through this book and have a look at it?
Well, I'd love to see it for the first time.
Yeah. You've seen the PDF, haven't you?
I have.
Yes. I've got the only copy in the world, though, the only physical copy in the entire world. I'll sell it to you for $1,000,000,000 trillion.
Half that and we've got a deal.
All right, fair. So we open up with a whole lot of character options. So the character options include heritages, they include cultures, they include backgrounds, all sorts of stuff. So let's start with the heritages. What are the heritages that we can find in this book?
Okay, let's see.
You have to remember them now.
I don't have this open, so let's see. For one thing, I'm going to go with rattling, because I see that on the screen.
Yeah.
This is sort of one of the classic underground RPG type of peoples. And I've had rattlings in my home game for years, and have play tested them extensively and had a lot of fun with them, because they're the perfect sort of hijinks one-shot heritage. Right, yeah. If you want to just do a quick heist, make an all rattling party and say, these surface folk have disrespected us for the last time when they, stopped us from robbing from the bakery or whatever. Right. And then you're done with your game preparation. The players will do the rest of it. Fair that's one that's fun.
Okay.
We've also got let's see, some of their names have changed during the course of the book. So
I have the list in front of you, but I'm being evil and not helping.
All right.
Do you want me to do them? Do you want me to say the names in order, and then you can describe each one?
Yeah,
Is that
go
right?
through
So
each one, and I'll stop you when I have something to say about
all right,
one.
let's start with the doppelganger.
Okay, well, this is also a really fun one to play. And 5e in its various forms has had things like the doppelganger. It's had the changeling. But this is the pure doppelganger that's very similar to the one in the monster books. So, which means you get the ability to read minds, the ability to, change into anything that you've seen. And it opens you up to really being able to do a lot of sneaky and nefarious stuff. This is a great piece to have in a game that's higher on the social and exploration side, especially the social side, which is something that Level Up does very well. And in a book about dungeons, we wanted to make sure that we hit the social pillar because it would be sort of easy to leave it out in a lot of dungeoneering stuff. You want to make sure that there are players, and I'm one when I play, who really get a lot of enjoyment, engagement out of talking to the other, interacting with the world, talking with people, making friends, and impersonating and tricking and stealing from NPCs as well. So we want those to be
other
options.
Players, depending on
impersonating other players and taking their reward. Yeah.
Right, mycelial. Tell me what a mycelial is.
These are a really cute heritage by Will Gownett. I think that's the right pronunciation. He's one of our developers who pitched these guys. They're a small sort of mushroom heritage. And they're just a delight. They've got thin, reedy little voices and are generally sort of conflict averse, although adventurers are probably exceptions. And when they, as a defense mechanism, they release spores which can poison their enemies and do various other, a whole host of other things that a customizable list of other ways that they can mess with their opponents.
Okay. What else have we got? We got ooze folk. They sound lovely.
Yeah. Well, they, I guess they could be if you press them into a lovely jelly mold. These are the sort of amoeboid folks who can, creep under doorways and through keyholes and other stuff like that. That's one of their main gimmicks. And in a dungeon, it's pretty useful.
Yeah. We've got two more. We have the Rockborn.
Rockborn. Let's see. These guys are. It sort of depends on how you want to envision them. I sort of envision them as sort of the statuesque, sort of Pygmalion, statues come to life, but you can also see them as sort of a earth or stone elemental, sort of igneous, and we've got art that represents sort of both of these the ways that you can be. One of their gimmicks is they can sort of roll themselves up and bowl their enemies over, which is something that Mike Myler designed.
Yes, I can imagine Mike coming up with that.
Yeah. I've never asked him, but I have a feeling it's based on him reading the same Scrooge McDuck comic that I read when I was a kid.
Fair enough. And finally, the last heritage we've got on there is the motley. What's a motley?
These are sort of a island of Dr. Moreau animal folk. They're not necessarily your cute, animal folk as much as this guy has one tiger arm and a gazelle leg and a scorpion tail.
Right.
And they're probably the heritage with the most different sort of mix and match options.
Mm.
So if you really want to go crazy and choose, something from column A and something from column B,
Yeah.
and end up with, a faster speed and a special attack that you can use and gills,
Yeah.
you can go crazy there. And they, like all the heritages in here, are mostly subterranean. They live underground, and in this case, it's mostly because most people don't really want to look at them. They're not. The few people who have ever seen them from the above ground are scared of them.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the picture of them right now. They don't look that bad.
Yeah, well, it's a very handsome group.
It's a very handsome group of Motley. Yeah.
It's the movie stars of the Motley world.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
They're live streamers, not like us, but like real live streamers.
Okay, so that's the heritages. We've also got 10 new cultures. We don't have to go through all of those, but 10 new cultures.
See if I can name them all.
Yeah, can you? No. Called the Grimlock, for example, is a fun one, which is basically generally a human culture, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So Grimlock, kind of traditionally, is a monster in D&D. Right. So what we've done here is, tell me, what have we done here?
Okay, well, I can't talk about the Grimlock without mentioning Peter Martin, who was the developer on this one. He also wrote the Grimlock entry in the Monstrous Menagerie and just did a fantastic job with it. He sort of explored what it would mean to be, how these people got underground, what it means to be sort of a blind people underground when you're interacting with others, and came up with a new backstory for them, and he expanded that here. These are sort of maybe your Magitech people who are responsible for various things like stabilizing plate tectonics with their strange devices. They're obviously influenced by the Morlocks, as are the Grimlocks. But they're a little closer to the source material in that the Morlocks from was it H.G. Wells'
I think so.
Time Machine?
Yeah.
Are the tech folk in a fantasy world, in the fantasy future.
Yeah.
So if you want to be swinging around shock sticks and various other sort of gadgets, these are your folks. Right. And while working on these, we grappled with what we wanted to do with blindness in an RPG, which is something that's been attempted a million times. So we went out and we got some consultants, blind and with visual disabilities, and got them to look at and suggest changes to the rules. And we went through a ton of versions before we had something that we were happy playtesting, and Russ, you were part of that too. Sort of something that felt good at the table, that we felt was something that we could be proud of. Yeah. So that's one of the ones that I think is the biggest swing. It's one of our more ambitious cultures.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got 10 cultures. I'm not going to go through them all. I'll mention a couple. We've got the Mischief Maker, we've got the Sewer Rat, Sunless Marin, the Underharvester and stuff. But we've got 10 of those. We've got 3 backgrounds. Again, we don't have to dive into those, but these are the Deep Hunter, Dungeon Robber, and Escapee from Below. It's sort of shades of Drizzt Do'Urden there, I guess.
Yeah, perhaps. So one thing I just wanted to, this sort of segues a little bit into what I wanted to talk about, something else I wanted to talk about about compatibility. This book is highly compatible with, it's a level up book, so obviously it's compatible with level up. It's also compatible with 5e in the same way that
we specifically designed it to make sure it is as well, so it's suitable for both games.
So, for example, the way that races work in 5e is they get a stat bonus along with the race. And in Level Up, we separate that out, and it's the background gets the stat bonus. So what we did for maximum compatibility is we present the Level Up version as the standard version of each one of our heritages, which Heritage and Race are pretty much the identical game pieces. But we have an appendix in which we have a pure 5e version. So if you're playing 5e and you want to get this book, you don't have to do any conversion. Just flip to the appendix, grab your Rattling for your all Rattling game,
and just use
and
it
you're good to
straight
go.
there. Yeah.
And then, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Morrus, owner of EN World, but there is a new, say, a refresh of the rules coming from D&D.
No.
I don't know.
Say it isn't true.
I'm just going to give you an hour to go watch the announcement.
Yes, yeah. And you notice that they've done something interesting with backgrounds there.
They have decoupled their bonuses from races and put them into backgrounds.
Yes, so we're even more compatible now.
So yeah, this book is in fact more compatible with, let's say, 6th edition, or what do you want to call it, than any previous 5th edition book.
Yeah.
So yeah, get it right now. It's your first 6e book.
I don't think they're calling it 6e. They're calling it 1 D&D now, aren't they?
They are.
D&D,
yeah, we'll see. We'll see if this is like D&D next, where it's
we appear to have a question. We have a question from Maxtor MM, and what Maxtor MM would like to know is whether or not we can go in a bit more detail about the new blindness rules. So I guess we can very quickly, just like elevator pitch, kind of very quickly.
Yeah. So where we ended up was Tremor Sense, plus some extra, some extra pieces.
Yeah.
We had more complex version of the rules, and we play tested them. But this is something that ended up making everybody pretty happy, and the range of the Tremor Sense was also important to work out. Tremor Sense of 10, which is sort of a very common thing to give out, allows you to do melee, but doesn't allow you to do ranged combat in any way.
And also does kind of negates a lot of exploration stuff as well. If you literally can't see something just over there, you can't interact with it in any way.
Right. So we went big. We went to 60, which means that you can be a wizard, a blaster wizard, or an archer, considering that most encounters, especially underground, are going to be within. You're going to be within 60 feet of your enemy. Although you never know, because fantasy underground is filled with, immense caverns covered with glowing toadstools that are a mile, so you're never sure where you're going to end up, and all those options we're going to talk about more later. But of course, besides the fact that you have Tremor Sense, you also have some things that you can't do as well. Tremor Sense doesn't let you spot all of the. Oh, I'm sorry. I've been saying Tremor Sense. I should say Blind Sight for most of this. You get Tremor Sense at a much smaller radius, and you have Blind Sight for 60 feet. So sorry about that. So it lets you see things, but it doesn't really let you get a really good sense of all the details on that statue that's 50 feet away. But you're going to be the first one who's gonna notice maybe someone trying to sneak up on you, because you're also going to have some extra abilities there. Yeah,
cool. So anyway, that's that. So we have also some archetypes to mention. Again, let's not go into them in detail, but I want to list them quickly because they are cool. So I've got the list in front of me. I'll just read them out. We've got the Arachnid Guardian. We've got the Sound Sculptor. We've got the Troll Slayer, the Labyrinth Priest, the Decomposer, the Dungeoneer, the Stone Warden, the Expedition Leader. The how do you pronounce that word? Tenebrous?
I've always said tenebrous, but this is one of these words that I've seen in D&D stuff, and
I think I've literally never heard it said aloud in my life. Yeah.
Right, doesn't come up a lot when you're watching the news.
Well, whatever that is, Stalker, Shadow Stalker, Stoneheart, Fate Woven, and Oozemancer. So they're all the archetypes or subclasses if you're a 5e player. So yeah, there's 13 of those in total.
Right, there's one for each class. Including,
and that includes the martial class as well. Yeah, the martial class is one we get a lot of requests for archetypes for because it's a new class. You can't use any older kind of O5E.
There's not a huge backlog of 8 years of content for this yet.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. So we're still in the players' options section of the book. So we've got a whole bunch of equipment. We've got gear. We've got spells. We've even got mounts. You can literally ride a spider, and there's an awesome piece of art that goes with that. I don't know if we have it to hand, but we've got a fantastic piece of art of somebody riding a spider, which looks amazing. So that's quite a big chapter, a big section. That. So what can we touch on? Maybe some of the cultural gear, perhaps. Or?
Yeah, I think that would be good. So we introduced something new to, new at least to Level Up, and I think probably new in this form, which is cultural equipment that's tied to a specific people or settlement, or even a heritage.
Yeah.
And this is stuff that you can only get if you're part of that culture, or if you've done a favor, you've saved, for instance, the community of Tinker Gnomes.
Like if the narrator gives it to you, basically.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Now you, right. Yeah, the narrator gives it, or you earn it by, befriending these people. And now they're going to be selling you their, patented map minder droid. Or whatever the other gear is. And of course, the other way that you can get stuff traditionally in fantasy role-playing is you kill somebody who has it. And so that can come up, especially for...
a bit of murder hobering.
Exactly. Yeah. So, probably you're not going to do that much with the Tinker Gnomes, but, hey, I'm not your mother.
Yeah. Do you recall offhand which cultures or which cultural equipment sets there are? I recall there's Shadow Elf, there's Aboleth, what else is there?
So let's see. We've got. I think we've got some Deep Dwarf as well. Yes, the people you'd expect to find living underground the most.
Yeah.
I think perhaps the one you're most likely to get your hands on through violence is the Aboleth stuff. Nobody's going to feel too bad about fighting these guys, and this is also the creepiest equipment. These are pieces of equipment that are all alive. They're sort of bioengineered. They have heartbeats. And this is, again, Peter Martin. They have really, creepy descriptions. Like there's something that, like, I think lets you breathe underwater, and you put this tube down your throat, and it makes your voice sound like somebody from Star Wars. It doesn't actually say that in the book, I don't think, literally. But, people can't really... recognize you by your voice. I think I imagine you sound like Bane in the Batman movie.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And this is another way that we want to sort of bridge the gap between equipment and magic items. This is something that you don't necessarily get. You can't
just go out and buy it.
You can't just go out and buy it unless you can. If you're rattlings also have some cultural gear, and they're kind of a scavenger culture. So one of their pieces of gear is called the thing, and it's just two things that have somehow been stuck together, and it could be anything. Like in my home game, somebody made a loot / lockpick.
Right.
And that way you can sort of conceal your lockpicks in there. If you're making a human rogue, you can't necessarily get that, but if you make a rattling rogue, you can start with that. So that's sort of, you can decide to opt into this through your character creation choices, and if you don't, well, then it's like magic treasure. It's something that you can find throughout the game.
Right. Okie dokie. So I'm going through the table of contents here. I've got the book right in front of me, just here. I'm just kind of whipping through the table of contents. So after that chapter, the next chapter is called Building a Dungeon. Now, this chapter is full of guidelines for mapping dungeons. It's got guidelines about different dungeon themes. It's got dungeon structures where you go into detail about branches, loops, gates, rooms, and things like that. Dungeon size is the physical structure of a dungeon. We have guidelines for stocking dungeons, which uses your node system, and we'll go into that in a second. And also we have a whole bunch of random dungeon delves plus some 3-page dungeons. So there's a lot in this chapter. It's a big old chapter.
Yeah.
So, and definitely too much to go through in one evening. So I think what we'll quickly do, let's jump into the node system.
Okay.
And let's talk about that.
So, one of the things that you need to do when you're making a dungeon, or really any adventure, is make sure that you're not just doing the same old stuff. You want every adventure to be different. And that is one of the challenges of creating a dungeon. You know, once your adventurers are going through the 10th dungeon that you've run, is this just going to be another, go 10, 20, 30 feet, there's a wooden door, kobolds are stealing it, or are you going to have something different? And what I have here is basically a sort of a checklist for things that you might want to put into the dungeon that are going to engage every type of player, or even provide variety for any single player. And I worked that into a mnemonic so that you can remember it without having to flip open to page 139 of the book or whatever it is. And the mnemonic is nodes, which isn't completely out of left field, because that's sort of what a dungeon is. It's a collection of areas, nodes that are connected by corridors or entrances or anything like that. So the mnemonic stands for novelties. We'll do that one first. And that is just, you want to have something in every dungeon, if you can, that stretches people's imagination that they haven't seen before.
That makes it unique. Yeah.
Exactly. Years from now,
this dungeon is made of gold. This dungeon is 5,000 feet high.
Right.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing bad could happen from a dungeon that's made of gold. Years from now, you want your players to be like, oh yeah, it was made of gold. And that's sort of novelty, something they're going to remember. And we've got a big sort of, obviously we can't list every possible novelty that you can come up with. But we've got a lot of prompts, engaging the different senses, using scale, different ways that you can think about it that hopefully spark something that make you say, all right, I want to make a dungeon that's centered around this. Yeah. So you want to have one of those at least. And then O stands for obstacles. Yeah. And this is sort of a reminder. You just don't want to have a dungeon where you walk through 6 rooms and fight some monsters in each one. You want to have some situations where people are stopped by a door or a trap or a puzzle, and have to think a little bit about how to get by it. Because solving problems and coming up with clever things is one of the great joys of role-playing. But something that we want to keep in mind and emphasize is, don't just have one solution for any obstacle. Don't just say, you need an athletics check to get over this.
Because otherwise you run the risk of bottlenecking the adventure.
Exactly. If people can't do it, whoops, too bad.
Yeah. That's like me playing every single video game. You get to the level you can't do, that's it, I'm done.
Right, yeah. Which is fine when it's only screwing up Morris's night. We're all for that. But if it's screwing up, 5 people's night who all came together to play this game, that's not so good. So if you hit a pit, obviously you can make an athletics check. You can cast fly. You can go look for you can think, oh, I saw a big long table in the banquet hall. Let's use that as a bridge. Yeah. There has to be a lot of different ways to get over an obstacle. And if you can't, well, make sure that whatever is behind it is not necessary. Yeah. So, you might have something where you say, well, you know what, you're going to need to pick this lock. If you do, or, you'll have to find this secret door. Yeah. If you fail to find the secret door, you don't get the cool magic sword, but you can still,
but you can that's still just a bonus. The adventure,
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so that's obstacles. And that can include all sorts of things as well, like traps and things like that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've got
while we're on traps.
Well, let's get to traps in a sec. Okay. So we just went through this first because traps is a subject of its own, I think. Yeah. So, discoveries.
Discoveries is the flip side of obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically if an obstacle is a door, then a discovery is a key.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of obstacles are things that unlock something, but it also could just be some random treasure. Or one of my favorites, and something that I make sure to include in pretty much every dungeon, creatures that are either friendly or willing to negotiate, because that alone is a reward. Depending on how good your game master is at doing funny voices, it could be a punishment, but and usually it unlocks, cool stuff for the players. Like they tell you about what's coming up or what the secret doors in the area are, and so on.
Yeah.
We up to D. E is escalation, and that is a mechanism where you can turn up the heat on your players as the adventure is going on. It could be as simple as setting off the alarm. Now the denizens of the dungeon are more alert, and if you really screw up, the big bad guy is ready for you or out looking for you and to set a trap for you. And so we have a mechanism here where you can track the escalation level of the dungeon, and that uses the a system which was which you invented, Russ.
Countdown dice.
The countdown dice, which are in core level up.
Yeah, they came from What's Old Is New, which is a game I wrote a few years ago, and they're one of my favourite inventions of all time. I love them, and they're a great way of just like gradually increasing tension without people knowing exactly when that's going to end.
Yeah,
because
and also
there's a random element to it.
Right, it's random. You don't just say, well, when you get to red alert, then something happens. It's also something that you can share with the players, either in a gamist way or in a sort of a story-based way. You don't have to. You can decide how much you want to let them in on what's going on, or whether you just want to say, well, these guys look more alert than the last guys. But it is fun to see people actually use the dice. And this is one of those things that once you try it, it becomes a permanent part of your game. It's one of those innovations like advantage and disadvantage that I think really help the game.
Right, yeah.
And then finally, set pieces. A set piece is usually sort of the big fight at the end of the dungeon, but that's that's not quite all it is. A set piece, the word set in a set piece usually implies that it's set in a specific place that's interesting. So it's not just that there's a big fight with the dragon at the end of the cave. The dragon's lair is important. The elements of the lair. And in fact, that is more important than the fact that there's actually a fight. You can have a big set piece that doesn't have combat. It could be sort of an Indiana Jones rolling boulder trap. It could be a
chase on
a chase.
minecarts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those are classic set pieces that we wanted to include. It could even be a conversation with a deep dwarf queen who is intent on destroying you unless you succeed at your tense negotiation.
But then again,
and we have
it can also be a fight as well.
But 70% of the time it's just going to be, let's fight a legendary or elite monster and their minions.
Yeah, in an unusual or exotic location.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, as we'll get to later, we have lots of unusual and exotic locations and legendary and elite monsters later in the book.
Okay. We have to pick up the pace a bit because we're down to 20 minutes now and we're not halfway through the book yet. So, let's start talking faster. So,
no guarantees.
So, we also have we have some random dungeon delves. So, what these are, we've got a collection of 8 different types? Or?
I think it's 8. So this is in some way the sort of the heart of the of my game mastering philosophy, which is which is prepared to improvise. I want to be ready for when things go off in a crazy direction as a game master or a narrator. And in order to do so, I'm willing to do a lot of preparation work, including writing this book. This book is really for me. The fact that you can buy it as an added bonus, sure, that's nice. But it's really that I want this to exist for myself. Right. So what this is a way that you can quickly generate random dungeons as you go. Sort of like as a game master, you can generate these one room ahead of the players. You can say, well, there are 4 doors. Here's what they look like. And then when they choose a door, well, hopefully you'll know what's behind it. It won't take you too long to roll it up. But the important thing here is, because this has been done before in various ways, the important thing here is that it all ties together cohesively, that they're themed. So we've got 8 different themes, and within those themes we've got different stories that can be woven.
Right.
So you can find a key in a pit, and that means that later on you're going to find a door that matches that key. Or you can find guards who are willing to betray their overlord, and then later on when you hit your set piece, you know what it's going to be. It's going to be some, these guys' boss.
Yeah.
So the goal, and this is something that I hope works out, and I've been testing it for quite a while, is to end up with something where the players didn't realize this was random. They think that you prepared this ahead of time, but if they say, oh yeah, we're going to go explore the valley over there, you can, just the same way that you can run a random adventure, you can run a random dungeon. Yeah.
Great. So, and if you don't want to run a random dungeon, you have another option.
Right.
You can
we
run
zoom
a
in even further. Sometimes you don't want to do that.
Yeah. You can run a prepared, because we've got a whole bunch of 3-page dungeons. And when I say 3
Right.
pages, that's 2 pages of text and 1 full-page map. So,
Right.
so they're kind of 2-page dungeons and a map, really. But
right.
So
And there's 8 of these as well.
Yeah, 8 of these, and each
and
of
they're
them
themed.
is...
They're themed the same way. Sorry.
So each of these is a different level as well.
Right.
So these are designed for a whole bunch of different level parties, and they go from level 1 up to what's the hardest
Is
one?
it 16 or 17?
16 or 17, right.
Is the top, and I run a lot of sort of high level D&D a lot of times because I'm testing monsters, and so it sort of came out of this. There's not really a lot of support for high level, so that's something that we wanted to make sure that we had.
Yeah. So I love these. We've got the Rotten Underbelly, the Serpent's Maw, the Palace of the Amber Prince, the Old Number 10 Mine, the Alden Marrow Bound, the Sinister Submarine, the Obsidian Peak, and the Maze of the Mountain King. All completely ready for you to just drop in your game and use right there and then. And they all use the node system as well, don't they? They use the principles from that system.
Right. So they've got all that stuff that makes the dungeon engaging.
Yeah.
Word of warning, if you do the Sinister Submarine, your players might end up owning a submarine. So that might be good or bad, depending on your players.
Yeah,
it's fully armed with...
you do it.
Yeah. So, you should be aware.
No. Okay, we're down to 15 minutes. Traps. Let's talk traps. How many traps have we got?
How many traps do we have? We have more than 100 traps.
Oh, that's a lot of traps.
And, I have a lot of thoughts about traps. Some of which, go check out EN World and see if you can dig up the post that I wrote about it, which sort of goes through the philosophy.
Yeah.
But the idea is I don't want traps just to be something that happens to you. But they need to be something that engages you and gives you choices.
You can interact with it in an interesting way rather than just making a die roll.
Exactly. I don't want it to be either, hey, you found this trap because of your passive perception, or too bad a trap went off. I want it to be something like, there's some dust on the floor. The dust, this part doesn't look as dusty. And if players aren't paying much attention, they might wander into the trap. And if not, they might stop and say, what's going on? If they don't pay attention to you, that's fine. A lot of players don't pay attention, and they shouldn't be unduly penalized for that. You can still use your passive perception. You can do both. So these use the exploration challenge system from Level Up. So each one, you can see they're on screen now, and they're each one is weighty. When I say there's 100, that's not just 100 like casual, like one-line things. That's like something like 50 pages of the book.
Yeah, each one's half a page to a page.
Right, and they've got levels, and they run in level from 1 to 20. I really wanted to have more than 100 because one of the sort of classic old school books. Let's see if I can remember the name of it. I think I'm going to blank on the name. Grimtooth's Traps. has very flavorful, although, unfair sort of old school traps.
Yeah.
And I sort of wanted to say, what if we took those ideas? We had the flavor, we had fairness and modern design sensibilities, and what if we had more than were in that book?
More than in Grimtooth. That's how we should advertise that book. More than Grimtooth.
Right. I just like writing. So,
do you have a favourite trap from that particular list?
One of my favorite things is what we've done with pit traps, actually. It's like a classic for a reason. And we have one of the things that we do a lot in Monstrous Menagerie is we have variants of monsters. Once you've seen one kind of ogre, you're not done. There's a bunch more kinds of ogre that once you're overconfident, you're gonna be in for some rude surprises. And we do the same thing with a bunch of traps in here. Pit traps has a huge number of variants. You want poisoned, you want, ones filled with gelatinous cubes or other monsters.
I'm now just imagining Tetris with gelatinous cubes.
Yeah, or Weltris, maybe. That was a game from back in the day that was basically like you're falling down a pit. So yeah, that's one of the fun ones. And then on the top end of the scale, there's like this giant elemental storm that you have to fight your way through in order to, destroy the two crystals that are orbiting each other in the center.
Right, yeah.
And that's something that I ran with my 17th level characters and gave them quite a challenge.
Yeah, and each of these traps is described in detail and has numerous solutions and hints and clues. Right. So the players can interact with them and ask questions about the trap and try different things. It really isn't just there's a trap, make a roll.
Right. Yeah. Each trap has a sort of a almost like read aloud text, or at least something that can inspire the game master to say, I'm going to read you something that has some hints that everything is not what it seems.
Yeah. Right then, moving on. We go into the narrator's tools, so we're going to shoot through these very quickly. We've got lots of information about using ability scores and doing things in the dungeon, like breaking down doors and using all the stuff like that. I won't go into that. Right. We have a bunch of magic items. Again, we don't have time. I won't go into those. We have a bestiary of a whole bunch of creatures. Very quickly, pick a creature that you love from this bestiary.
Well, let's see. I really like. We've got a Titan in Monstrous Menagerie. We have a couple of different sort of named Titans who have cool abilities, and we've got a Titan in here who's very vain, loves his reflection, and is able to summon mirror creatures to fight you. And while we're looking at this page, we've also got a lot of variants of skeletons.
Yes, the four-armed burning skeleton.
Right. If you want to fight a skeleton on fire, this is how to do it.
Yeah. And these all use the Monstrous Menagerie format.
That's right.
You've got the stat block, but you've also got the signs, you've got the legends and lore, you've got a little encounter table with suggested treasure, you've got all those useful tools that mean that a narrator can run an encounter using that monster with everything just on that page.
Right.
They don't have to go anywhere else. Everything's there.
And if I'm remembering, I think we have something like 50 monsters, so it's a significant number.
Yeah, and NPCs as well. Yeah.
Right.
Right, I want to talk about the Underland Gazetteer. We're nearly at the end of the book now. Underland Gazetteer is where we delve into the Underland, which is not the Underdark.
It is different. It is a little weirder than the Underdark. It's not as much in the sort of
It's more fantastic.
It is.
Yeah. More weird.
Yeah, I mean, Underland sort of gives you a hint that it's sort of like a bit like Wonderland. It's underground. It's in caves, but it's strange. And again, I want to call out an author who's instrumental in this section, Morgan Robbins, who really made it a strange and wild place. We've got a list of existing locations, including one of these mushroom forests here, in which there are sort of mushroom creatures that can co-opt you, and there's a bizarre circus, and there's sort of strange, disturbing, and dreamlike locations, as well as thousands of miles of empty roads that were created by who knows who, and currently inhabited by who knows what.
So I want an adventure in Enderland. I really do. That's
I think that would be
It's got to
great.
be a thing we should do, and really, really in that adventure highlight the weirdness of it and the sort of like, the fantastical elements of it.
And I think it could be a great high-level adventure. This is something that you've done. Once you've done your dungeons and you want to go deeper, here's where your 10th level characters can find something they've never seen
Whimsy,
before.
that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
There's a lot of whimsy in Underland.
Right,
It's
whimsy,
colourful.
but
It's not dark. There's stuff there.
yeah, is whimsy but unknown threat.
Yeah. Oh, that's not to say it's safe, of course.
No, by no means.
No. Okay, so that's the book. We also have an appendix. The appendices contain the 5e races, conditions, lists of monsters by challenge rating, traps by challenge rating, all the usual stuff that you would expect to find in a book right at the end of it. But that is us. We've been through the entirety of the Dungeon Delver's Guide. It's amazing book. So let's talk about Kickstarter. So the Kickstarter is in, 12 days now? I think. The 30th. What's the date today?
18th.
Yeah, it's 12 days then, so it's really, really soon. So that's launching on the 30th for 1 month. You'll be able to pick up this book in PDF or physical format. You will also be able to pick up any other level up stuff that you may have missed. So that includes the core rule books, that includes mythological figures, zeitgeist, includes the combat maneuver cards, which I believe have landed in America now, finally. They've been printed, they've shipped across the Atlantic, they've landed in America, and those people who pre-ordered those should be getting those very, very soon. So there's a whole bunch of level up stuff you can also pick up, but it is important to highlight you don't need all that stuff in order to use this book, because this book works with 5e. But we hope that if you haven't got it yet, you'll be interested enough to pick up some of this level up stuff and just see how different it is when you use that with this book, and what some of the cool stuff that we bring to offer using the level up system that we believe enhances especially the exploration pillar of the game.
Yeah. And obviously exploration pillar is so important for this book.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the 30th, and I think that pretty much brings us to the end of the show. Should we talk about shipping very quickly? There's not a lot to say, but digital rewards will be fulfilled as always as soon as the Kickstarter ends, immediately, like within seconds. We always do that. We're like the fastest in the world. We've got a reputation for it. We've been earning that reputation for years now. That's what we do. Kickstarter ends, you've got it. That's because we've made the book. It's here. You can have the PDF as soon as it ends. The physical shipping obviously takes a little longer. We are shipping basically to UK, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Europe and Scandinavia is pretty much where we're shipping around the world. There are some places we can't ship to just because the shipping situation at the moment is ridiculous and the prices are so high. So if you're in one of those locations, we highly recommend that you pick up the digital versions. But if you are in the US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, Scandinavia, we will ship to you. And that, I believe, is that. That's it. 30th of August. Dungeon Delver's Guide coming to Kickstarter. It's gonna be amazing. Can't wait.
Thanks for having me on.
And thank you for joining us.
Everyone, hope you liked the book as much as I liked making it.
And thank you to Jess behind the scenes. People can't see her. She's dying of the plague, literally the plague. I saw her and she's got like black boils all over her face.
For sure.
And her left arm has fallen off. It's horrible. It's horrible. But she's still struggling on managing the stuff behind the scenes. Hopefully she's going to be well enough to do the podcast tomorrow. Our regular weekly news podcast. And with that, I think it's probably time to say goodbye.
Right.
So.
Level up. Advanced 5E. Welcome to the Dungeon Delver's Guide. This mighty tome includes new character options, from rattling decomposer druids to doppelganger shadow stalker rogues. New gear, spells, and mounts to prepare your adventurers against subterranean threats. More than 100 clever traps, tricks, and puzzles that challenge players instead of punishing them. Guides for building satisfying underground adventures. A dungeon building system to build unique thematic dungeons and lairs. Pre-made dungeons for characters of any level, ready to drop into an existing campaign. Terrifying new monsters which populate the darkest corners of the world. And a guide to the haunted cities and midnight seas of Underland, the weird realm beneath the earth. The Dungeon Delver's Guide will change your dungeon adventures forever.